Hey, welcome back. In a previous video called How to Become a Genius, we talked about the 5 Renaissance traits. Today I want to double click on the 5th trait, which is how to build on the internet. We're going to learn how to build a golem. GOLEM, or the golem framework, is a way to productize yourself while you're building on the internet. I'm going to explain the whole golem framework and system as if you're a student in my 7th grade technology class. So even if you're a complete beginner at building on the internet, don't worry, I'm going to guide you through the entire process. By the end of this video, you can have a powerful framework for productizing yourself and building a one-person business on the internet. So in old Jewish traditions, there's this idea of a construct. It's like a mystical, magical, spiritual construct of a golem that allowed the person who created it to show up in the world in a much more powerful way than a regular human being. And this idea that happened thousands of years ago has a parallel in the digital world that we're living in right now. It's now possible for Renaissance people like us to create a digital and physical system that allows us to show up in the world in a way bigger way than if we didn't build this system. There's 5 components to it, and the word golem is an acronym that stands for Genius Operated Leverage Enabling Machine. So the first component of building a golem is to become a genius. Now, this word genius is like this loaded word in our society because we tie it to like doing well in school, being smart, smarter than other people, these kind of like ridiculous notions of being in like an industrial society where if you are better efficiently doing certain things, you're considered like more valuable as a human being and stuff like that. But that's like a ridiculous notion to our ancestors and even to like Renaissance men who lived in the first Renaissance. They didn't really look at genius the way we think about genius. And I think the definition our ancestors had actually makes a lot more sense than how we think about genius. And a genius doesn't necessarily mean that you are a hyper intelligent human being. A genius is a person who has figured out what feels like authentic play to themselves and created a structure or a system or a way to turn that play into valuable work for the world. Another way to say this is from Naval Ravikant. He says, do work that feels like play to you but looks like work to others. What that means is you want to figure out authentically joyful activities that you do or you would naturally do if you had infinite money and infinite time. How can you take those activities that you do and make them something valuable and helpful for other people? And so that is the first component of our golem system. And this might be the hardest thing, and this might be the thing that takes you the longest to do. This might take you years to figure out. And the only way you're going to figure these things out is by doing a bunch of different experiments, trying things out. And if something feels fun, like genuinely fun, then that might be an indication that you can turn that thing into something valuable for others. So you don't have to know exactly what it is, but if you have an inclination, what I would do is I would just get like a journal or something and just try to jot down some ideas on things that you genuinely enjoy doing. Some ways to figure this thing out is to look at your YouTube watch history, look at your Instagram posts that you like. What does your social media feeds look like? What are the type of content that you're consuming? What are the type of books that you're reading? What are the conversations that you're having with your really good friends who you can be your true self around? And that will give you an indication of where your play might be at. It's really important that we spend some time in this first part because we're going to build our entire golem, our entire framework, our entire way to productize ourselves around this idea of your particular genius. And when we put it on the internet, it can become your personal monopoly, where only you are able to do that thing in the particular way you do it that will allow you to create a one-person business around that thing and monetize it in a way. So the second letter in our GOLEM acronym stands for operated. When I think of a golem, I like to think of it as like this gigantic mech that's operated by you. You're the pilot. You're sitting in the cockpit of this gigantic machine that you're going to be building on the internet in the world that has really powerful arms, that has really powerful tools and weapons that you're going to be able to use at your disposal. So the type of mech and the type of pilot you are has to be in sync. So it's a good idea to kind of have some self-awareness about who you are as a person. So when you're building your golem, you can design it around yourself. The only way to do that is to really have self-awareness of who you are as a person. The first component of having self-awareness is to understand what makes you who you are as a genius. We talked about in the first part. The second thing is your skill stack. Every single person has life experiences that gives them ability to do certain things. It's just hard for us to know what those things are because we're living inside of ourselves. If we were on the outside, we'd be able to say, hey, that person's really good at this, that person can do this, that person can do this. But since we're inside, we don't think it's such a big deal. But examine what your skill stack is. Think about the jobs you've done. Think about what you've been good at school. Think about the things that you do on a daily basis. And I bet you can find some skills that you can do that not a lot of other people can do. Or you can do well that not a lot of other people can do well. The third thing is your opportunities. Your opportunities are your unfair advantages. So depending on where you are in the world and your life experiences, you're going to have unfair advantages that other people do not have. For me, it's teaching. I've been teaching for 10 years. So I'm going to have unfair advantages because of who I am as a teacher that you don't have because you're not a teacher. For you, it could be what you do. You could be an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or something like that. And that will give you a different set of advantages than I have. And depending on what kind of golem you build and how you build your golem, you can use your advantages to help you. So if we were going to build a consultancy, I would have an advantage on doing one-on-one services because I'm really good at teaching people. Where if you're an accountant, you might be really good at looking at numbers and data and consulting people through that. So depending on what your life experiences are and different opportunities, you're going to get different things. The fourth puzzle piece of having self-awareness is understanding your challenges. For me, I'm dyslexic, so I know when it comes to doing work in a certain way, I'm going to have a little bit of a disadvantage just because of how my brain processes information. Of course, dyslexia gives you a lot of advantages as well, so that could be part of my opportunities. And every challenge could be flipped around to see it as an opportunity as well. So the next thing is your mindset. Your mindset is your beliefs about the world. And you can improve your mindset by reading. You can improve your mindset by having great coaches or mentors. You can improve your mindset by surrounding yourself with people who have positive beliefs in the world. The sixth component of self-awareness is psychology. And for psychology, I would hone in on three different things: interpersonal relationships, intrapersonal relationships, and evolutionary biology. How did humans evolve our brains? How do we interact with other humans? And how do we interact with ourselves? If you study these three areas, you can see where you are in your psychology compared to general population of people, and you can see how you interact with other people through the lens of your own psychology. And that'll give you a little bit of understanding of your self, and it'll give you a lot of self-awareness. So that's G and O. L stands for leverage. So leverage is like this almost like magical thing where you can do a little bit of effort to get a huge output. And depending on what kind of levers you have, it will determine the magnitude of that output. So there's 5 ways to gain leverage. You can use tools. You can use capital, which is money. You can use labor, which is hiring people. You can use code, which is basically what the back end of the internet is. And you can use media, basically the front end of the internet, the things you can see, like videos and pictures and stuff like that, content. Let's say we have these two, I don't know what to call them, lumberjacks. These like big gigantic dudes with beards that go down into the forest and they cut down trees. Each of them has an axe. They go down into the forest and they cut down trees, and they can cut down trees like 1 tree per hour. Let's say we give one guy instead of using his axe, we give him a chainsaw. Now, that guy, instead of using his body's physical energy, he can use a propane or a battery to power that tool, and now he can use some mechanical energy to cut down that tree faster than the guy who has an axe. Let's say the guy who has an axe can do it 1 an hour. This guy might be able to cut 3 in an hour because of the leverage that this tool provides, suddenly the guy who has a chainsaw has a lot more leverage than the guy who has an axe because his tool got a little better. His skills didn't really improve that much, and his knowledge around trees didn't really improve that much, but his ability to physically do the job got a lot better. So that's just tool leverage. There's 4 other types of leverage. Let's stick with that same example and talk about labor leverage. We have the same 2 guys, the chainsaw guy and the axe guy, and the chainsaw guy got so successful at chopping down trees that month, he was able to buy another chainsaw, and he gave that chainsaw to his brother. Now, instead of cutting down 1 tree per hour, his company is able to cut down 6 trees per hour. That's labor leverage. So you have tool leverage, and then you have labor leverage. Let's get even more deeper. Let's talk about capital leverage. Let's say that our chainsaw company got so successful that they became so profitable by at the end of the year, they had a bunch of money in their bank. He can take that money that he had in that company and he can go invest it in a furniture company. Now, without even having to build furniture or know anything about furniture, that money can grow as that furniture company grows. The last 2 types of leverage is media leverage and code leverage. And that's what I'm doing right now. But media leverage is this video that I'm making one time is going to live on YouTube, and you guys are going to be able to watch it later on. I make this video once, and after I upload it to YouTube, I don't have to really do any more work, and this video can keep getting viewers, years and years after I make it. And it could be 1 viewer or it could be millions of viewers. The difference between having 1 view and a million views is not really any extra work for me because the YouTube algorithm, which is code leverage, is going to be doing a lot of the work for me. So those are the 5 types of leverage: media, code, labor, capital, and tools. So when you're building your golem, you're going to think about how can I use some of these forms of leverage to build my system when I'm productizing myself. Can I improve my tools? Can I invest more time into this? Can I hire someone? Can I make this a piece of media? And how can I use technology to leverage the things that I'm already doing? And then slowly you can remove the bottlenecks in your process of doing things with these 5 pieces of leverage. If something is difficult for you, think about, can I use code, media, tools, labor, or capital to make it easier? If you do this for a long enough period of time, then you can create like a 1-person business that has a lot of leverage. I think in the next 10 years, there's going to be companies that's run and operated by 1 person who has utilized all these types of leverages to create like a $1 billion business. Think about Instagram. When it sold to Facebook for $1 billion, it only had 13 employees. And the reason why it was able to generate such a huge amount of value was because it had used some of the highest quality types of leverage. It used all 5 types of leverage. First, it was a technology company, so it inherently was building code. So once the code was written, the engineers didn't have to do anything else on it. They just had to debug it and improve that code. They had the highest quality labor by hiring like some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley to be those engineers and programmers. They had lots of media because it was inherently a media company that was helping other people distribute their content on the internet. It had a lot of high quality capital because venture capitalists who were already technologists and who has already built companies was advising them as well as funding that company. And they use some of the latest technology stacks to make sure that that app was able to scale all around the world, and it was able to be really fast, and it was able to work properly on all these new devices and stuff like that. They use all 5 types of this leverage to create like this gigantic company. And now you can do that as a 1-person business. You don't have to have expertise in all of these things. You just pick a few things and you can hack them together and you can create your golem to have super high leverage. I'll do another video on how I'm using leverage to build my 1-person business and how I'm productizing myself, so you can get an idea of how you can do that for yourself. But the basic idea is I'm a creator and I'm using YouTube and their code. I'm creating media. I'm using some of the best technologies that exist in the world. And I'm using myself as the highest quality labor I can find. And I'm still working in a really fun and cool job to where I can use some of the money that I earn from my job to fund my one-person business, so I can use it to productize myself. Just because this video is getting a little too long, I'm going to combine the enabling machine, or the EM part of GOLEM, into one segment, and in a later video, I'll expand on it and we'll talk about it. So in this part of the framework, what we're trying to do is we're trying to map out the process that we used to create some products with the cognitive effort that we put in. So it could be like writing something, or it could be a piece of art that you made. It could be a video that you created, whatever it is that you created for the internet as a part of building your one-person business. These things that you're creating are complex things. It's not like an idea turns into a video automatically. There's a process that happens in order to turn that idea, something that exists in your brain, into something that it could exist on the internet. So what you want to do is you want to map out each and every little step in the process of that thing going from an idea to living on the internet. There's a lot of ways to document and map out the exact process that you use. You can use a Word document. You can draw it out using a journal. It doesn't really matter how you do it. All you really want to do here is write down each and every single step that you do in order to go from an idea to a product, and then write what you do at each thing. So for me, when I get an idea for a video, I take my phone out and I write that down in this app called Things 3. Basically, it's like a to-do list. And if this idea is good enough, I put it into my Notion, which is a word processing document where I keep a bunch of ideas that I know I'm going to make YouTube videos into. And then if that video idea is good enough, I'll put it into an outline where I'll think about what I want to talk about and how I want to talk about those things. And then I'll do some research throughout the week as I'm thinking about creating this video, and I'll fill out that outline. There's a bunch of little steps that help me get from an outline to sitting here in front of this camera and talking to you guys about this idea that I had. The whole point of writing down your process is because you can improve it over time. When I first started making videos, the way I captured ideas, the way I outlined, the way I shot videos, the way I edited videos was random. I would do it differently each time. And as I got better at making videos, what I realized was the product that I would be creating at the end would be a direct result of the process that I used to make that video. As soon as you write it down, you'll have a big overview of exactly the steps that you took to go from idea to something that ends up on the internet. And then as you are learning more about your craft, you'll pick up ideas from other creators and other practitioners who are also working in your field. You can refer back to that map and plug in things that can help you improve the quality of your work and also improve the efficiency of your process. So when I first started making YouTube videos, I was using like a different camera, different settings, different lighting. The way I spoke was different. How I came up with ideas and scripting and all the things that I did to create a YouTube video was completely different. And I didn't change that whole thing all at once. I just changed little things here and there in my map to the point where I can make these videos right now. And I'm not done yet. I know the systems and the tools and my process will continue to change and improve over time. So what that does is it allows me to get better and better over time in this like really systematic way where I can experiment with different ideas, one by one, remove the bottlenecks in your system that is slowing you down or is making the quality of your work not as good as it could be. Improve each little part by using different tools or experimenting with different processes until you have a really strong flowing system. Once you have your exact process worked out and it's crystal clear to you, then you can use other forms of leverage to make it even more efficient. You might be able to hire out the editing portion of your video processing, or you might be able to hire a research assistant that can help you fill out your outline. You can use different tools of leverage to make this thing even better and faster. But in the beginning, you have to have a crystal clear vision of your process and how you want your video to be created. Because remember, this is your genius that we're trying to manifest through our goal. Before we end this video here, I want to quickly touch on productizing yourself. So when you want to productize yourself, you're eventually trying to solve a problem for someone else using your genius, right? There's really two ways to do it. You can go build that product first and then find your customers or the people that you solve that problem for, or you can build your audience first and then figure out how you can use your genius to give them something valuable. I think building your audience first is an easier way to go, and it gives your product a better chance to be successful, because as you're building your audience, you're getting to know them and figuring out what problems they have, and then you can figure out how you can apply your genius to solve their problems. Whereas if you're building a product and then trying to go find an audience for that product, might be a little bit different and challenging. You probably have to have a really awesome product to start with, and you probably have to have a lot of insight on who you're building that for. I don't recommend doing that. So I think for us, for people that are trying to become modern day Renaissance men, it makes sense to become a audience builder first, because once we have distribution, once we have access to a bunch of different people that follow us, then we can really get to know them and create solutions that are very specific to that audience. We can start experimenting with different products that they might be interested in. So even if your first product doesn't work out, that's okay, because you can just tweak it or iterate that product to try to make it fit more closely with what your audience actually wants. Whereas if you build your product first and then you try to go find an audience, then you haven't really built a valuable asset. So you have to go start over again and try to go build another product and hope you can find an audience for it. If you build your audience first, you can put out a product and see how your audience reacts to it, and you get feedback from your audience to make that product better, to really create something special by combining your genius with what your audience actually wants. All right, everybody, remember, a well-lived life is long. See you guys on the next one.